Hi, sixth graders. This recording will help you review for your Unit 4 test. So whatever is on this review will definitely be on your test. So one thing that I would suggest is to pause this video and to get out either a sheet of paper and something to write with, or your study guides, so that you can jot things down and make notes as you go along for you to study. Because like I said, everything that is on this recording will be on your test. I took these study items directly from your Unit 4 test. So let's get started. We'll start with geography. Let me move it so you, oh, sorry. I just wanted to move it so you can see the entire slide. There's some missing at the bottom there, but without going to the next slide. Okay, hang on. There we go. Okay, these are all, every bullet here is just a separate fact that you will need to know or memorize. So Byzantium is located in the Bosporus Strait. So you can see I have a picture there, and that is the Bosporus Strait today. Still there, but of course with modernized things, and it is a different, it's still in the same place, but there are different cities and a different country in it now. So Byzantium was located in the Bosporus Strait. Istanbul is in Turkey. It was the, or excuse me, it is the modern day capital of Turkey. Moscow is the present capital of Russia. It says if the present capital, but it means it is the present capital of Russia. Constantinople was the center for the Eastern Orthodox Church, and Constantinople became Istanbul. So it's same place, different name. And Constantinople was the capital of the Roman Empire under Constantine I. He was the emperor at that time. And we will go on to politics and government. There are a lot of facts about politics and government in this unit. A centralized government was formed under Constantine I. In other words, it wasn't a bunch of small little city-states. He centralized the government, much as our government is centralized in the United States. We have all of our government in Washington, D.C., all of our federal government. And the Turks conquered Constantinople. And there is a picture of present-day Constantinople, which is now Istanbul, of course. Barbarians conquered the Roman Empire. So even though Roman Empire was huge and lasted a long time, eventually barbarians conquered them and defeated them. And the power of the Catholic Church was increased after the fall of the Roman Empire. The Catholic Church became very powerful. And that was after the fall of the Roman Empire, because there wasn't that strong Roman government anymore. So we'll go on, more politics and government. Justinian I became the emperor of the Byzantine Empire in 527. That's the year 527. So 1,500 years ago, practically. Next fact has to do with the Crusades. 4 crusades were made to the Holy Land being Jerusalem and Israel. And remember, crusades were the holy wars. And the crusades, the holy wars were so that the Christians wanted to make their religion known throughout the world. They thought everyone else was infidels, and they wanted to spread the Christian religion. So even in the Holy Land there were other religions, and so they wanted to spread Christianity, and only Christianity. So bankruptcy was the cause of the decline of the Byzantine Empire. Bankruptcy means They owed too much money everywhere, and they were broke, basically. So that was the decline of the Byzantine Empire, and Ivan the Terrible was crowned the first Tsar of Russia. That word Czar is pronounced Tsar, and it's just like a king or emperor. And he was the first of Russia. And the picture at the right is of the Crusades, or the Holy Wars. And we will go on. There is more about politics and government. The purpose of the Bolshevik Revolution was to put an end to the Romanovs. The Romanovs were the ruling family, the monarchy, the king and queen at the time. And so there was that Bolshevik Revolution uprising to put an end to the Romanovs because people were starving in Russia at that time. The Crimean War was started because Russia wanted a port. Russia didn't have a port on that side of their country, and they wanted that particular port. It was an important port. The picture on the left is the Crimean port today. As you can see, it's a huge, busy port. World War II was started when Germany invaded Poland. And the Treaty of Versailles made Germany bitter after the end of World War I. Because at the end of World War I, the Treaty of Versailles was signed. And a treaty, of course, is signing that there will be peace among the nations. But in it, it blamed Germany for World War I. And so Germany was bitter and angry. And so basically, their anger festered for all of those years until World War II, and then they started World War II. All right, we'll go on again, and our next subject, well, still politics and government. 3 countries that are still communist are China, Cuba, and Vietnam to this day. They are still communist. 2 ways the communists used to break down democracies were lengthy wars and dissension. So the communists kept putting money into these wars and making people disagree and making a lot people unhappy with other people. That is dissension. So that's how they used to break down a democracy and to put communism in place in many countries. Khrushchev was removed from the government because of failures in foreign relations. Remember, Khrushchev was a president in the USSR, or the Soviet Union. And the Serbs, Muslims, and Croatians were fighting in the area of Yugoslavia in the 1900s. No, in the 1990s, sorry. During my lifetime. So there's just a picture of modern day people who are Serbs, Muslims, and Croatians. And this wasn't during the war or fighting, but it just shows you that they're regular people just like we are. And basically they were fighting because of something called ethnic cleansing. Excuse me, certain groups wanted to make sure the other groups weren't anymore. And so they wanted only their group to survive, basically kind of like the Crusades. But anyway, it was in very recent history. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about religion. The excommunication of the Patriarch was what started the Eastern Orthodox Church. So excommunication means that you're thrown out of the church, or the Catholic Church. And so when the Patriarch, or the head of the Catholic Church, was excommunicated, he and his group started the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is a lot the same as Catholicism, but there are some differences. Russia became primarily Orthodox because the government adopted it as a religion. Now, as you know, in the United States, we don't have an adopted religion. We're free to choose whatever religion we want or not. And that wasn't so in Russia. They forced all its citizens to become Orthodox. Oh, domes are a principal feature of Eastern Orthodox churches. So you see that church at the left has a lot of domes, and those domes with the kind of points on them like that are called onion domes because they kind of do look like onions, and they are very famous in Eastern Orthodox churches now. That type of architecture is used in Eastern Orthodox churches even today and even in the United States. For example, in Alaska, there's Eastern Orthodox churches, and though the ones that I saw were not as big as that, they still had onion domes. And they are in other states also, not just Alaska. Let's see. Catholics and Protestants fought in the 30 Years' War. Okay, Catholics and Protestants have fought a long time. There are especially places in Europe where they still fight to this day, and in Northern Ireland, the Catholics and Protestants are still fighting against each other, and every once in a while there's a fight or uprising. And Catholic and Orthodox are the two primary religions in the Northwest Balkan countries. So if you remember from your lessons where the Balkan countries are, you'll know that those are the two primary religions there. Let's go on to some facts about people. Language is the only factor that held the people of Slovene together. They had the same language, and that was it. They had different groups had different lifestyles, different religions, but the language is the only thing they had in common. Das Kapital is the book that describes the ideas of communism. You can see at the right. It's a real book written by a man named Karl Marx, who was a German, and he wrote down all of his ideas for communism in that book, and it's a very famous book. And in a classless society, people work for the government. That means, like in communism, it's called a classless society. So here, like where we have our upper class and our middle class and lower class, they say that in communism there are no classes and everyone works for the good of the government. And that's the ideal, but not always true in practice. In the USSR, which was the Soviet Union, which was Russia and surrounding countries, the Constitution stated that people could say what they wanted. Now, the Constitution stated that, but in practice, it wasn't always true. A lot of people in the USSR got in trouble for saying things against the government or for saying things to the outside world that they didn't want said, and so they would get in trouble with the government and be sent off to prisons and work camps. The people of the Soviet Union were told only what the government wanted them to hear. In other words, it was propaganda. Whatever the government wants you to hear is what it's going to say. They had very few television stations or radio stations or newspapers or magazines, and what they had were run by the government. Everything had to go by the central government in order to be printed or to be said or to be shown on TV. So is that really saying what you want to say? No, that's really being censored, and that's really propaganda by the government. The people of the Soviet Union had no religious freedoms. So whereas earlier Russia they were all Orthodox, in the USSR there were no freedoms to worship, even in the Orthodox Church most of the time. People, if they wanted to worship, they had to do so in secret, and they got in huge trouble with the government if they did. Okay, so again, if you need to go back through this recording, I would suggest that you do that so that you do well on your test, because like I said, everything on here will be on the test. So it's just something you need to make notes about and to memorize. And we'll go on. If you have any questions about this recording, please contact me before you take your test. And if you are watching this recording, you must call me to discuss, to get credit. another spelling error. It says Marhul instead of Mrs. Hul. Sorry about that. Anyway, you need to call me to get credit, and we'll just discuss. I'll ask you a few things that you saw in this video, and you'll be good to go. So if I can get this video to quit, I will, and good luck on your test. Bye.